Hello and welcome back. This installment of the series explores what academics is, what motivates academicians to do what they do. It's not an exploration of what education is. That's a much more complex subject. And perhaps the difference should be the first point of clarification. Everyone knows why someone wants to be a teacher and their good intentions. But the reason anyone raises these questions is because they or someone they know was abused, neglected, or disappointed by academic people, possibly a whole series of them. And this is what needs to be explained. What motivates them to do these things? I have seen a biology professor fail an entire class. I have seen a self-important teacher of a class that's not significant to a student's career, let's say homeroom, prevent that student from graduating high school. But I've also seen a teacher change a student's grade from a fail to a pass because they had a crisis of conscience. I've had friends who are teachers. This criticism is not an attack on them personally, but they're a common profession that creates these situations. And many teachers themselves are victimized by their employer. Acts of kindness, of decency, are not what unites them, because they are not universal. They are exceptions. Therefore, I'd like to start this section with a quote. "The adventure of liberal education no longer has a hero." That's by Bill Reddings, author of The University in Ruins. To make the claim that the academic doctrine itself is the source of these predicaments takes quite a bit of proof. You have to start by clearly defining what you're talking about. And right now, there is a profound lack of definition on the subject. Our language is littered with catchphrases designed to promote this institution at the subconscious level, so much so that a reformer has difficulty even communicating basic ideas because of the lack of appropriate terms. There's a commercial out this year produced by ExxonMobil that says, "Let's invest in our teachers so they can inspire our students." One of the biggest issues in our state right now is teacher salaries, and at first glance it might appear this is related to that. But when you go to the website, you see it's actually promoting something called the Common Core, national standardization. Wikipedia would consider "invest in our teachers" to be a thought-terminating cliche, like "support our troops." The typical argument or proposal made by an academic representative or citizen is so loaded with these biased expressions, the true meaning is unknown. Right now, our state is in the middle of one of the biggest campaign rivalries in its history. And we are bombarded with ads in which one side says our schools are doing better than ever, and the other says the same schools are doing poorly, just to settle a score between two individuals. This is how academic arguments are. Take, for example, a spokeswoman interviewed on NPR earlier this year said her family is relocating to the state of North Carolina to invest in education. What does that mean? NC's Duke University is the biggest landowner in the city of Durham, known for its inner-city slums. Land bought with tuition payments. My first thought was, how does she profit personally from encouraging this blind contribution? My second was, what do the kids think of this? I have always understood the definition of academic to be of or like an academy. This makes it an absolute term. So a strict institution closer to the original model is more academic than a moderate institution. Public schools in this country were originally based on European military institutions. In 1852, in the state of Massachusetts, they were made compulsory. Students who didn't attend were rounded up for truancy and their parents jailed. So from the beginning, this doctrine has had a very clear ideal. Places that call themselves academies are known for not changing with the times. Their methods, behavior, and dress preserved from a bygone era. And since then, public schools have repeatedly strayed and returned to that ideal. Like the military doctrine, the academic doctrine has at its core the creed, "Get what you want at any cost." Credentials that adults deem necessary for their competing in the workforce are placed above things that are significant to the students' lives now. The accuracy of what we see and hear about the classroom is not as important as the purpose it serves. Academicians almost always speak of the result of their aims as justification for whatever they do. Even reluctant supporters believe it is practical, not ethical. Or if they claim otherwise, their ethics may sound exactly the same as their pragmatism. Their philosophy is agenda-based. And yet, despite this clear ideal, they frequently fight amongst themselves, the right hand of academia against the left hand. It is a debilitating condition that will damage the entire system for engaging in it, and rightly so. The reasons for these divisions is that the problems inherent to public schooling affect everyone differently. At each level, there are victims and victimizers. Each chooses a different complaint without seeing a bigger picture because they're all under the influence of indoctrination. They are united by fear, doubt, and loyalty toward the political religion they were born into. It's almost unheard of for a school district to fall short of this doctrine. A principal who is cruel to his students may keep his job, but if he tries to defend them against policy, his career is over. Public schools are standardized much in the way that national parks are standardized. The discrepancies that make headlines may seem ridiculous, but if they happened because of certain policies or attitudes, they can happen in any school in the country. Every state has candidates whose mission is to bring discipline back to our schools. These are just pawns in their internal struggle. Instead of judging an institution that fails to meet its own standards, they imagine a higher consensus they can account to. Such a system of policies and assumptions cannot hope to deal with situations as broad as the field of education. For our purposes, this means that a reformer's objective must be to help people stray from the academic mold. It is this direction in which the needed solutions lie. Throughout history, civic education has been controlled by the ruling class of the particular society. Like all social institutions, it bends and sways with the effect of money and politics. A group with influence takes an interest in the next generation to ensure the survival of their own motives, and is more likely than anyone to decide the means by which people are educated. Now, I myself didn't start any earlier or later than the other students, but I was not taught how to think in the classroom. The American public, however, is told how to think in the classroom and subjected to 12 years or more of institutionalization that favors these objectives and their founders. Persistent, unrelenting influence is supplied both at school and in the home, with resistance met with punishment and complacency with reward. In the classroom, this is handled by a myriad of different enforcers that changes with each subject in each year, each with their own particular style, which minimizes any vulnerability or accountability an individual educator may have. And there are special roles beyond the classroom to fill in the gaps. The so-called guidance counselor is one, to ensure that every possible avenue is covered. In the home, this may take whatever distorted form a parent chooses, as they may not even be aware of what is going on at school and are empowered to destroy a child's life as punishment or offer just as extreme rewards. A vast majority of youth, perhaps 99%, either succumb to this or choose the lower class lifestyle of a dropout or delinquent. This gives public schooling more political clout in our society than any corporate entity. Academicians are the dominant political party, with virtually every lawmaker and judge in their pocket. It's a party that is never up for debate. Instead, all of society debates how to get its expectations to work, endlessly. Proponents of every plan endorse and perpetuate the school system because a citizen cannot attain their positions without a background demonstrating affinity to it. Students are taught that school is good no matter what it does, inspiring a loyalty so strong it can only be compared to religion. A student who sees fault in the system is not only discouraged through official channels, but people will go out of their way to defend the school by any means necessary. When a child recognizes flaws and is told he is mistaken and therefore bad, the institution is now teaching people what to believe. The result is an indomitable block of support, which allows self-serving politicians to remain in office without fear, reminiscent of old world aristocracy in which it was the public's moral and religious duty to serve the crown. In the controversial 2010 closing of 10 schools in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, North Carolina, amid accusations of racial segregation, local parents and students locked arms in defense of their schools against their own school board, resulting in violent exchanges. In cases like this, even the school itself does not survive, just the control. By closing them down, the board is turning its back on everything they presume to believe, and the public finds it is loyal to nothing sacred at all. Academicians are so entrenched in preserving their method that they have forgotten what their original goals were. Improving test scores, for example, is a common objective on which entire campaigns and careers are based, even though scoring is not a result in itself, but is supposed to be an indication of learning. When a restaurant chain has a customer satisfaction survey and the cashier tells you to give the highest rating to win a prize because they are rewarded for having high numbers, it's called seeding the survey. Experts can give detailed answers to pacify this issue far more thoroughly than I can, simply because they have devoted a lifetime of resources to studying this game. A more appropriate response would be to ask citizens what their true objective is when they call for improved test scores. Is their goal to improve learning or individual chances of success? If so, there are other ways to achieve this than through scoring. Like any major corporation, the consistent goal of academicians is expansion. They believe their doctrine must spread in order to survive, and they don't foresee a limit to the extent of their enterprise. Any realm where they have no presence is seen as unclaimed territory. As propositions come and go each year to extend the school day, reach further into the student's private life, and shorten the summer break to achieve year-round schooling. Control over a student's entire life is the prize to which they inevitably return. But expansion does not address or improve serious problems within an organization. It is a reward that is earned by the level of competence of an organization. It is better to minimize a practice until it gets its act together, equating its size and scope with its performance, relinquishing students, teachers, and materials to institutions where the problems don't exist. This gives all qualifying methods an equal playing field available to the citizen. Likewise, reducing class sizes to increase individual exposure also fails to address the actual problems. The truth is, smaller class sizes only expose a student to whatever is already there. If the class has a good teacher, this is fine. But what if the teacher is bad? These policies are dependent on every educator being perfect in order to succeed. If a student had a choice, many of them wouldn't take the chance and prefer to be in a class of 50, seated as far in the back as possible in the hope they go unnoticed. I have seen presenters who were so talented the size of the class didn't matter to them. So shouldn't the quality of the program matter more to us? The examples I've given are a sample of how academic problems are dealt with through assumptions. And with assumption, there is always oversight. Programs are judged preemptively instead of by their outcome. This practice is everywhere, which brings us to Webster's second definition of academic: theoretical and not expected to produce an immediate or practical act or result. An academic promoter may find this a premature conclusion. However, there is a moderate approach to all things, and a forum must exist in which all fact and conjecture are separated. These same academicians do not condemn their own method when it fails, so what right would they have to condemn an antithesis before hearing all it has to say? No matter what one's opinion, academia is a doctrine. Anyone who takes part in it is either biased in favor of it, biased against it, or objective. Objectivity should be the goal and meeting place for all educators. Please email me your comments. I'm interested in people who disagree more than anything else because it helps me to prove my case or points out things I haven't considered. Tune in for the next installment, which I am tentatively calling Inside the School.